Hey everyone, I'm Julie Gunlock, host of the Bespoke Parenting Hour. For those new to the program, this podcast is focused on how parents should custom tailor their parenting style to fit what's best for their families, themselves, and most importantly, their kids. Today, I'm joined by Maureen Monte. She's the author of the new book, Win Like a Girl, Coaching Female Athletes to Become Confident at the Game of Life. Maureen was a multi-sport athlete and now provides leadership consulting services to professionals, athletes, including Olympians and coaches. In her new book, Monty provides a playbook for improving confidence in female athletes. This is the book. As you can see, all my tabs. I was just devouring this book, Maureen. I am the mother of three teenage boys, all in sports, and found it useful myself. So, thanks for coming on to talk about your new book.
Oh, Julie, you know what an honor is to be
Oh,
here. Enjoyed our summer's time with the book stuff we did and love IWF, been a partner of it or a follower, member of it for a long time. So
Oh,
thrilled to
that's
be here.
great. Well, we are thrilled to have you. And I honestly think this is one of the best books that I have read about, and I love the format, and we're going to get into that. But I wanted to read from the intro. The introduction was written by Riley Gaines. She needs no introduction. But for the four people who might be listening who don't know who Riley Gaines is, has been outspoken when it comes to men competing against biological females, men basically invading women's sports. Which happened to her personally. She writes in the foreword, I wish I had Win Like a Girl when I was young. Confidence training could have only helped me lead through the startling adversity I faced as a college athlete. She goes on to talk about what happened to her, and at the end of this forward, she writes, Maureen trains female athletes to go first, to be the leader who inspires others to follow, to refuse to seek approval from those who may never give it, to speak up because others need to hear what we have to say, and to act even when we feel afraid. In sport or beyond it, from the locker room to the boardroom, thereby winning at the game of life. Every time I use my voice, I am stronger and more confident. No matter your mission, Win Like a Girl will help you do the same. I couldn't have put it more perfectly, and that's why I started with that blurb from Riley. Tell me first, or give our listeners first a synopsis of the book, and talk a little bit about how it's structured, because I think it's really interesting how it's both a sort of fictional account and a story, and then there's a guide in the back. So tell us a little bit about why you chose that format.
Oh, well, first of all, I had a coach, a book coach, and the book originally was nonfiction. And I've been working on this blasted book for 4 years, Death by Writing. It's taken 100 years off my life, I swear. But when I went to fiction, followed by the playbook, 13 exercises, activities, however you want to describe it, things you can do to improve confidence in female athletes or anybody, women, right? And by the way, you said you had three boys. I had a high school boys hockey team make this journey. I didn't call it Win Like a Girl. With a losing record, they won the state championship this past weekend.
Wow.
So if people do struggle, all people struggle, and most people struggle with confidence. So with that aside, when I made it fiction, it allowed me to incorporate all the interesting, good, bad, and otherwise people that I have worked with in working with athletes. I've worked with over 2,000 athletes and coaches, 850 male, 850 female athletes. And it allowed me to pull in people from all the experiences and create a story that everybody could relate to, meaning the 12-year-olds that read it relate to it, the parents that read it relate to it, the coaches that read it, and even people like teachers. I'm speaking to a lot of schools about confidence to without them being athletes. So the point being, if it resonates in the dining room, the locker room, the conference room, the classroom, we've accomplished a big goal, because I do believe there is a confidence crisis in our
Yeah,
country.
let's drive down that a little bit, because we also hear a lot about a mental health crisis.
Mhm.
I think girls have always struggled sort of with, especially since social media
Right.
has become such a
COVID.
part of our COVID, school closures, all of that.
Mhm.
Tell me about this crisis of confidence. Do you do you think that it affects girls more than young boys, that young men and young boys? Do you think that this is something that affects athletic girls more? Kind of break it down for me.
So it's a great question, and um, we can look at how. Let's just talk about athletes for a second. But then they grow up and go to college and then go into the workplace, right? And so in fact, let's start with the workplace. Work backwards. How often do women refuse to raise their hand and say, "I want that promotion," or negotiate raise, or and the research shows a man, and this is from, I don't know, Wall Street Journal or something, but the a man will be 50 to 60% qualified for a role and say, "Oh, I could do that,"
Right.
and a woman will be 110%, and you go, "Oh, what if they think I'm not good enough?" Right? So there's it. What we by teaching confidence, one reason I made it about athletes is I want to start with the girls when they're young, right? It's a high school team, but it can be, these discussions are happening with younger kids than that. So, because I want them to learn how to say no and mean it, I want them to say, I need help when they need it. And I want them to say, yes, I want to be captain next year. Or yes, I want to start in goal next year, right? And then go for it. Go to the coach, I want to be on the robotics team next year. Have that conversation rather than hope you're picked, right? So here's where I think, though, the crux of the problem is for women in particular. We are confusing competence and confidence. I do not believe sport builds confidence, and everybody will say it does. I believe it builds competence, and we are assuming competence will lead to confidence, and that's not true. Simone Biles was interviewed last fall after winning, I don't know how many, 39th gold medal in the United States, a national championship, and said four key things that the reporter said, "How do you feel?" And she said, "Oh, it feels great. My team believes in me. My coaches believe in me. My fans believe in me. My family believes in me. Maybe now I can start to believe in myself." There's nobody more competent than Simone Biles.
Hmm.
So we must train for confidence with the same intensity, frequency that we train for math, for sports, all that stuff. We are assuming if they're good at math, they'll be competent to raise their hand in class. That's not true, right?
I do want to dig down a little bit more on the fact that you're talking, you sort of geared this towards athletes because it's a
Because
way,
they work hard.
right? They work hard.
That's
It's
my
also a
goal.
way to sort of capture these young girls when they're young,
Right.
when they really need that confidence, and then they can sort of drive that into into their professional lives. I mean,
Right.
even in college when they're in
Right.
sororities and all of this. Um, and I'd actually like to talk to you a little bit more about that. But I want to, before we talk too much about that, you are an athlete, you are a multi-sport athlete.
Mhm.
Um, Talk to me about the role of sports in your life. Why, and maybe I just like to hear your sort of thoughts on the role of sports for young girls and why it's important.
Right.
I grew up with parents. My dad always did these sort of what I would call individual sports. He rode horses, he
Mhm.
sailed, he skied. We skied as a family, we sailed as a family. But team sports, that's kind of where I'm going because it's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
And I wasn't a part of a lot of team sports. And I really feel bad about now looking back and, it's like my parent, no, it's not. I'm so angry at my parents. It's not that, but it really is like, it wasn't encouraged in my family.
Yeah.
And I think it would have been so good for me. But tell me why you think sports and particularly team sports are good for young girls.
So sports are good for everybody, even individual, because you're forced to perform in front of people. That's different than I'm going to write code in my cave and it's going to be an awesome product. All right. You are forced to go out there and give it your best in front of others. That's hard. The advantage of the team, and by the way, even individual sports have a team around them,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So but you must
My
learn.
my son wrestles. He goes
Okay,
out on that mat by himself, but he still has
right.
his team. So
He has a
you're
team,
right. You're right.
right? But it isn't the same as, let's say, basketball, where you have to pass the ball. There's
Right.
more collaboration in the moment, right?
Right.
So the the sports gives a people, if we talk about it enough, a sense of controlling the controllables. I cannot control the ref, the parents, the coach, the weather, but I can control choosing to be a good teammate. And these are all exercises in Win Like a Girl. Accepting feedback. More female athletes think feedback is failure. All feedback is good feedback. If people listening to this turn this off, that's feedback, right? We didn't do a good job. I didn't do a good job. And then working hard and competing hard. So there are these things that they can control that gives them the opportunity to influence the score, to influence other people, to get the desired outcome with things that they cannot control otherwise,
Right.
right?
Right.
So you can't make a college accept you, but you can do everything else right to make it a possibility. So control the controllables, let go of the anxiety. You can't, the coach, the school may not pick you. Let go of that. Do everything you can within your control. And that makes a big difference. So carrying that into the workplace, do we not want, in this day of quiet quitting and, oh my Lord, I had to work 5 hours today, athletes who will work hard, who will compete hard, who will accept coaching, and who will be great teammates? Yes, we do. And
You
they
know,
know how to do that.
you talk about, sort of all feedback is criticism, or and
Mm.
you're trying to teach women to take this criticism constructively, essentially. I want to read this part in your book. It says success is helping athletes navigate their emotions. And it's interesting because I feel like, you don't want to I think young women are more emotional than young boys. I mean, I don't need to go far down that. I think everybody who has young daughters and deals with young people knows this, but and maybe that's misogynistic to say or sexist to say, but I'm just talking in reality here. I feel like girls are also, they're much more body conscious. They're much more prone to depression for things that are said on social media. So anyway, you write, success is helping athletes navigate their emotions and overcome significant challenges, like being ridiculed on social media, saying no to alcohol or drugs, or simply sharing that they're struggling in sports, school, or life. I love this. Asking for help is brave, you write. You go on to say, we must develop powerful girls who will choose conversation and agency over silence and inaction. Winning is training girls to dig deep for valor when the brutal winds of self doubt howl. You're a beautiful writer, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Victory is coaching athletes to be confident, formidable girls who say, this is wrong, and then do something about it. So, this is all, I love that passage because I think that's really important that girls learn this. It's a skill, it's a coping
Mhm.
mechanism, but really it's a
Yes.
skill to deal with this. But I wanted to talk to you. You had Riley do your introduction.
Yeah.
She talks a lot about how women are scared and intimidated into silence, especially when
Mhm.
coaches don't support them in terms of males entering women's sports.
Right.
Talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on this trend in women's sports, and the need to preserve women's sports. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Utterly unacceptable. And where are the adults in the room, right?
Where?
Where? And frankly, while I love what's happening, they're calling out Charlie Baker, and we've got this lawsuit now, right?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
yesterday, which is, I love that.
Yeah.
But I also want to say, where is the Women's Sports Foundation? Where is Safe Sport?
Right.
All these organizations, they're like dead to the world on this topic, and they're afraid to, or they have their own agenda and they don't want any part of it. That's fine. But I believe Riley Gaines is going to go down as the Rosa Parks of this challenge. When Rosa Parks said, I'm not moving, the whole world fell apart, right? Oh my Lord, look at this, right? And then what a hero she became. And so when someone will stand strong, as an example, and in my workshops, I have girls say, and boys, this is how the boys won the state championship this weekend. Tell me about a time you were brave. They've been brave before, right? So we just have to reinforce it so that when they need it most, it's there for them because trouble will find them. There's a place called Comfort Castle that no
I
of us
want
want to leave,
I
right?
want I love you sent me a video and I watched this I watched a few of your videos and I do want to get back to that talking about
Sure.
Comfort Castle. And again, I want people to understand that this is really a pleasure to read, and it's something that I think people should really consider giving to their daughters
Mm,
because, and not just athletes. If your child is
no.
in theater, that's
Right.
another thing. If your child is in student government, if your child,
Robotics.
um,
You can
y-
go down the list.
you
Debate
know,
team.
debate team, exactly. This is not just for the
Right.
lacrosse girl or the basketball player. This is really the Riley Gaines in your life. This is really good for, and even academically, I think this really just kids who are just very academically challenged and academically driven. There's a lot of really good stuff in this. Talk to me about Comfort Castle is one of the things I wanted you to talk about, but at the end, so you go through this book and it's a fun kind of book about a coach, and then you have I have it tabbed. I have it tabbed somewhere in here, where it starts. You do activities,
Right. That's
and
the playbook in theory,
yes,
right?
the playbook. So tell me about that.
Well, I didn't want people to have to think in the middle of reading the book, how would I institute a team trust bank? How would I speak about accepting feedback? How would I speak about the great escape from Comfort Castle? I wanted to have them enjoy the ride, make their notes like you did, and then go back and say, here's what we did, and here's how you can do it. Right?
You do give a model of it. You do. It's interesting. In the book, you actually this is in the middle of the fictional book. The coach does go through the steps and
Yes, it's
does
right
give
there.
yes, and gives
Right?
so it is kind of nice that it's not just at the end, here's a guide. It's like you actually read how that coach utilizes
Right.
basically the guidebook. And
Right.
so let me just
And
ex-
she had to ask for help,
yes.
right? She failed and
Yes.
had to ask for help. Mhm.
And you go through you even have in here, so talk first of all, talk to me about Comfort Castle, but you also talk about you even have a section on here on how parents play a role.
Mm.
Let's start with Comfort Castle.
So one of the challenges in young women and in every all of us face this to some degree is that first of all we think if we're in Comfort Castle, nothing bad will happen. And my point is trouble will find you, right? So you need to leave Comfort Castle on purpose so that when the time comes when you're pushed outside your comfort zone, and you will be, right? That you have trained for that moment and you don't fall flat and say, I just can't do it, right? So one of the biggest things that keeps young women in particular in Comfort Castle is the fear of disappointing others, uh, making people being separated from the rest of the team if they should make a mistake, right? The team won't like me. So I do believe in addition to the crisis of confidence that we have, we also have a crisis. I think approval seeking is a disease
Of
amongst young women.
conformity, of
Yes.
just
Yes.
not
Go along to
wanting
get along,
yes.
right?
Especially
And
when it comes to this transgender issue, which is,
that's a
I
good
am
example of it.
I am trained. I know how to talk about this. I've been aware of this issue, and I am still I don't like to talk about it,
I know.
and I don't like to hurt feelings, but but reality demands that we be real about this, and
Yeah.
we leave Comfort Castle.
We must leave Comfort Castle.
We
That
must.
is the only way to grow and learn and become brave. And
And
the more you do that, the bigger your Comfort Castle gets.
yes,
Suddenly it's an empire,
and
right?
yeah, and it's interesting because we're also following the case of this sorority in Wyoming, which I'm
Right.
sure you're aware of it. There is
Mhm.
a male who identifies as transgender and wants to live or be in that sorority house or visit that sorority house, making the women in that sorority house very nervous, very uncomfortable. And there's a lawsuit, obviously now. Um, and those girls too felt they didn't just feel pressure, they were ridiculed by the sorority's leadership and sort of bullied by the other members of the sorority. So this kind of book about standing up for what you believe in,
Right.
leaving that comfort castle, and also being a leader for the other girls who are still scared is so critical,
So critical. And
especially with this issue now.
a bully, you can count on this. They're expecting you to do nothing.
Right.
Therefore, the moment you do something, you've got the advantage. And if you give the power of approval to someone else. You have just allowed them to crush your confidence. You can do everything right, and a person may never approve of you. It happens in the workplace all the time, right? So if you're like, oh, here's my heart and soul, I hope you like me. Why in the world would you ever give somebody that kind of power over you? You cannot do that. You must simply do your best. Your best is good enough. Bring your best game. You know what that is, train for it, and the rest will take care of itself. That person may never approve of you.
You have a sort of framework here that you talk about and how coaches can sort of do activities with their with the team, and talk about these different pillars, these sort of this list
Those are
of
the controlling the controllables. Those are
yeah,
four things, four pillars of victory.
yeah. Tell us about those.
So those are the four things that if we do those things, the score will take care of itself, right? You can't control that number on the scoreboard, right? You can do everything right and still lose the game. So therefore, let's focus on doing everything right, because the odds of us winning, our higher performance, will come from those four pillars of victory. Being a coachable athlete, listening, trying to accept feedback, which is hard. Being a great teammate, which means sometimes you have to step aside and somebody else plays when you don't, right? The we over me of winning, which is harder for boys and girls. And the difference between work ethic and compete level. So work ethic is I work really hard in practice every day, right? Compete level is like in a soccer match where you can tell that girl is not going to give up that ball,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So there's a battling element of competing hard that we want to encourage the young people of all, male or female, to go after it. Do not confuse work ethic with compete level. They're different, right?
Yeah.
So, and one last thing about society in whether it's misogynistic or whatever, I have the Strength Finder data. The Strength Finder is from Gallup. It measures the internal motor and the internal greatness of people. Your greatness on the inside drives a greatness on the outside. There is no exception to that rule. I can measure that internal motor. The boys, the male athletes, have this tremendous compete level. And I've got the data from 850 and 850 girls, and they have way more confidence. They have way less human connection strengths, okay? So the boys battle as a team to bond as a team. The girls compete levels way lower. They're tenacious and they work hard. And then there's all this relationship building strength. Dead last, so they care about the glue, being connected. That's why they worry about what other people think of them more than the boys do. Dead last for female athletes is confidence, with only 2% of 850 female athletes having confidence in their top 5 strengths.
Wow.
So I have the info. I'm happy to share it. I can share both genders, but the point being, yes, the women do worry more and are more focused on that social approval.
Well, the most important thing is the lessons that you are helping people learn in this book can be carried. I actually, kind of recognize myself in a lot of this, and I took some lessons away to use in my professional world. I mean, I work with all women. So I found this, I'm kidding. I love it.
Of course you do.
It is a wonderful organization, but I did take
So
away some
what
lessons.
example, like 1 or 2 things did you take away from it?
Well, I think, in general, the idea of being willing to speak, even in an organization of professional women, it is sometimes you don't want to rattle egos, you don't want to hurt feelings.
Mhm.
And sometimes I think that can stop you from affecting real change, and the fear of hurting feelings, and the fear. But I also think that sometimes I think with younger people, I'm talking about Gen Z that is now in the workforce,
Right.
I do recognize that there is a tenderness there that isn't present with my generation, and figuring out ways in which to overcome that. But I do think that women of that younger generation, I mean, they really have to. There needs to be less assumption of sort of nefarious intent.
Yes.
And
that's where the team trust bank, which is part of this, you're either helping the team or hurting the team, and it's
yes,
a deposit or it's a withdrawal. If we have a team trust bank, we don't have that assumption stuff going
Yes.
on. And if we do, we address it,
Yes.
right?
Well, I mean, I think the thing that I learned the most from the book is sympathy for those younger generations that are coming out of
Right.
COVID, that are coming out of, some pretty intense years in this country of losing, their high school years,
Yeah.
even having
Yeah.
disruptions in their college years, and how it
Right.
is important for our older generations that have already launched and are frankly more confident to bring them along on the journey and to nurture them, but to do it, gently.
Gently. And that's where a book like this can help. That's why it's being used in of all things in some of the
You're not
business books.
telling women, "Toughen up," you
No, I'm
know?
not. I'm
You're
saying
not.
here's
There's
how to
activities.
perform well,
It's a
right?
how-to, guide, and it's done with compassion and understanding. Um, I would love to close this by you telling us where we can find you if you are on any social media
Yeah.
platforms. I think people should follow you, and then I have one other thing to say, but where can people find you?
My website is maureenmonte.com, and I'm on Twitter. I think it's Maureen E. Monte. I'm on LinkedIn. There's a Win Like a Girl book YouTube channel. So that's the name, Win Like a Girl book. That's got some videos that you saw out
And
there.
you do this. You consult with people, you do
Oh
coaching.
yeah, I'm just back from working with two teams in Missouri, right? And both corporate and these were girls teams, right? But yeah, so and I'm just happy to help in any way that I can. I personally think one area we're missing in the whole trans discussion is training the girls for confidence to act, right? So a bottoms up movement. It's good we've got the policy. It's good we've got the lawsuits. I'm all for it. But we should be training female athletes to
Well
stand strong in this
well,
one.
you know what? One thing, Maureen, that is very sad, and I know I said we're concluding, but I would love your opinions on this. One thing Riley says is we need to stop. We just if there is a male
Right?
in your heat or in your, that you find that you're gonna now be competing,
Mhm.
you gotta stop, you can't do it.
No,
Which is, and she even admits, she's like, "That's easy for me to say, I'm done with my competing years."
right,
As an athlete, how painful is that for young girls? But
right.
but it has to be done. It
It
really does.
does. And if it were a team sport and you lock arms, you turn your back on them and you walk away or stand there and let them run down or whatever, hit the volleyball. But if you lock arms, and this is where women are more likely to do that, right, as a group rather than the one person standing up. But if you lock arms, if we trained for that and have these discussions and help them understand that the movie inside their head of what might happen, it will never be 100% true. It
Right.
might be 10%, it might be 20, it might be 0%. It will never be 100% true. So do not let that prison of fear keep you in comfort castle and where you're silent, right?
Yeah, the last thing I wanna say here is, you can, this has now become kind of a trend where you can buy books and actually give them to your library. You can buy books, you can give them to your school library. They may not take them all. We know all the drama with school libraries, and so
I was thinking the same thing. Like,
they might be on the defensive, but this is a truly excellent book, instructive and useful. And again, not just for athletic girls, but for all sorts of activities that and just your girl in general. And I think this is very useful for boys as well, although obviously the intent is girls. Buy this book for yourself, but also buy an extra one and give it to your local library, give it to your school library. You can donate books. This is the kind of books, I should put it in. You're like, get it in the screen, Gunlock.
oh, it's
Okay.
fine.
This is the kind of book that belongs in every school and public library. And Maureen, I'm a big fan, huge fan. You're doing great work, and thank you
Thank you.
so
Thanks for
much for
having
coming
me.
on. Thanks for coming on today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
The Bespoke Parenting Podcast is a production of the Independent Women's Forum. You can send comments and questions to me at julie.gunlock@iwf.org. You can also help me out by hitting the subscribe button and leaving a comment or a review on Apple Podcasts, Acast, Google Play, YouTube, or iwf.org. Thanks for tuning in today.